Good morning, everyone. You're welcome again to the project financing and ESG readiness series that we have every bi-weekly. You're welcome. I hope you all had a great weekend. Our focus today is on stakeholders' engagement and social license to operate. This is really one of the most important issues in project financing, because technical strength and financial projections alone can no longer determine whether a project is fundable, whether the project will be sustained for the long run, or whether it will be accepted generally, most especially in the African context, and also across global projects, not only Africa. So we will dive straight into it now. Thank you for joining. So we continue to see all over the world, most especially Africa, that projects can succeed or they can fail based on the quality of their relationship with communities, the relationships they have with different level of stakeholders, the trust they are building with different level of stakeholders, the stability of the social environment of the project, generally the ability of the project team to manage all the social concerns or the social risks, the social issues that are surrounding the project. The ability for the team to manage it responsibly is what makes a project also bankable on the social part of it. You know that we have three legs to sustainability. So we have the environment, we have the social, and then the economic arm. So today we are diving fully or looking fully on the social aspects and the social license to operate, most especially for projects across Africa. So the session today, the objectives, we will look at why stakeholders engagement matters, what is really the social license to operate, how does social license risks, how can it affect financing outcome, how can it affect operational continuity or even regulatory approvals. It is not actually a license as in a certificate, but we will look at it more later today. We would also, later in the next 10 minutes, we will also look at how community-related risks affect financing decisions. The topic is broadly relevant to project developers, to miners, to consultants like us, and to the DFI colleagues of ours. So next is why stakeholders engagement matters. It is because your project, our project, cannot operate in isolation. Every project must operate within a community. It must fall within a local economy. There is a social system around every project. There is a political environment around every project. So a technically well-designed project may still fail if it does not understand the people, the environment where the project is going to be situated, the institutions that are going to be affected by the activities of the project. And if they have generally poor engagement, it can it can translate to protests, to operational disruptions in the long run, and to reputational damage. There can be, we have seen projects that have security concerns, that the community ownership is not there, and the reputation of the promoters, including the funding partners, is at stake and has to be remedied because the social license to operate was not secured. It could also bring regulatory pressure. It can lead to financing delays or cancellation if it's really volatile. So increasingly, the lenders, the funders, project proponents, they always view social instability as a major project risk, because social conflicts can stop a project. It has in the past stopped a project. So effectively looking at it and addressing it head on is the way to go to obtain the social license. So next, what is really a social license to operate? It is not a formal acceptance. It is usually an informal acceptance and trust that is granted to a project by the affected communities, or let's say in generality by the affected stakeholders. It is important to understand that the social license is not the same as government permit. A project may have a valid license, the government permit, the regulatory approval, the signed contracts within all parties, but can still face resistance in the surrounding communities if there is no trust, if the community around the project feel excluded from the decisions that have been made that affects them. So social license is built on trust, is built on transparency, is built majorly on consistent engagement and attending to the needs, responsiveness in the generality of engagement, not just engaging one time and documenting that, yes, these people have been engaged. No, it is a long-term relationship management. So projects with weak social license often face operational resistance, and by and large, legal issues can even emanate for such poor management. So who are really the stakeholders? I have these infographics I want to share. Next slide. Stakeholders will include individuals, groups, institutions, organizations that could be affected, that could be impacted, that have high influence or low influence. I have on the screen, as you can see, in a typical project, this could include host communities, the traditional authorities around the host communities, the workers, the contractors, the subcontractors, the regulatory environment, civil society organizations, women in generality. Okay, I'm not controlling the slide, but I'm just trying to use my cursor to show us on the slide. You can see the level of impact or affectation, which means the affected parties as stakeholders in the priority matrix, and you can see the level of influence as well and interest. And on the other side, where you have the stakeholders map, you can see the traditional rulers, the lenders, the investors, the directly affected persons, which include the land users, the land occupiers, so to speak, the landowners, the workers in the community, and the vulnerable people, and everybody else that have direct or indirect contact with the project or that could be affected by the project. And community is not just the locality within a few kilometers. It can be transboundary as well. So a project in Nigeria can affect a project in Ghana, can affect a community in Ghana. So that engagement that spans across from the mapping, initially we have to map our stakeholders to see which stakeholders are we dealing with? What is the nature of this project? Is it the immediate locality that will be affected, or this is going to have some transboundary impact on other communities that aren't on the ground? For instance, when there is air quality issues, if that is the concern. So effective stakeholders mapping is very critical. It's part of financing readiness. If a project does not know its stakeholders, or how they are affected, or what influence that it will hold, or what concerns they may have on that project, then that project is already exposed to avoidable social risks. Next slide, please. Let me move very fast now. What DFIs as banks, what they assess, they generally assess who are the affected people. Is there meaningful engagement? Is there a grievance mechanism existing? The project, does it understand the history or the conflict or the potential community concerns? Are the lenders also aware? They want to be aware as to whether the project promoters have accessed the project risks, I've documented, I've shown evidence. I'm always talking about evidence. Let's move quickly. The common stakeholders risks that we have, it include community protests, land disputes, when the land take is not properly taken, maybe the government have secured the land many years ago, or they have just secured the land using some other means apart from following the proper procedure laid down by the law of the country, or even, let's say, the IFC performance standards that we use on stakeholders engagement. If that is not followed, then there is a risk. These risks are not abstract. They can directly affect project timelines. They can affect the project cost. They can affect the general confidence and the reputation of the promoters. And financing confidence can go down. Contractors' performance can also be affected. So there is a long array of risks when there is poor communication or misinformation that can damage the trust relating to the project. So how does poor engagement affect the financing? Engagement can create serious financing concern if it is poorly handled. It may lead to project delays. It may lead to operational shutdowns. It can lead, as I said earlier, also to to legal disputes. And unresolved stakeholders conflict is a red flag. It's always a red flag. It's always a high risk. Every stakeholder conflict needs to be documented, follow-up needs to be done, and then resolved eventually. And all of the procedure or processes used for the engagement and resolution of this conflict have to be documented in a certain way according to the standard procedure. So what effective engagement looks like? It is early, it is continuous, it is very transparent, and you cannot leave out people. I'm particularly a gender advocate, so it must be inclusive and it must be documented. It is not a one-time consultation exercise carried out only to satisfy regulatory requirements and tick the checkbox and say we are done. It is a strong engagement, strong continuous engagement that involves regular communication, active listening, follow-up actions, and long-term relationship management between the project promoters and the community. It also requires the project team to close the feedback loop by explaining how stakeholders' concerns have been considered and what actions have been taken to address those concerns, and how the project and the stakeholders are now aligned for the project to progress. So this is where many projects fail. They consult, but they do not listen. They listen, but they do not document. Or sometimes it is fully documented, but they do not respond to the needs that have been raised. It's just a document on the shelf, and it's forgotten. We have engaged. No, effective engagement requires all three communication components, which is listening, which is evidence, and also action. What is the role of a GRM? GRM is very, very essential. The mechanism must be set out. Major lender expectation is that you should have a GRM in place. It provides a structured process for us receiving grievances, for us recording the grievances, investigating and resolving, not just receiving and archiving, but resolving and tracking the complaints that have been raised and making sure that they have been fully addressed and the parties have come to an understanding and satisfactorily they are now moving forward on the matter. It also creates documentary evidence that the project is listening and responding to the concerns. So GRM is a must. It reduces escalation because it gives communities and workers a trusted pathway to raise concerns, and they know that this concern that they have raised is going to be addressed and that they will not be ignored. That means they are valued even in the decision-making process, not that the decisions are being made for them and with total disregard of their concerns. So next is stakeholders engagement and how it relates to ESG. It is actually a major part of the social dimension of the three legs of sustainability. but it also connects strongly to governance. And by and large, systems support operational stability. Strong stakeholder management systems is a support to the project. It shows that the project has accountability structures in place and that it is more likely to identify the risks early because it is engaging. It is more likely that it will respond to the grievances quickly because it's engaging. It is more likely that the project will maintain a stronger relationship with those communities because they are engaging. So this is why projects with more mature stakeholder system, well planned, ab initio, before the project commences, those projects are generally viewed as very low risk when it comes to social license to operate generally. What we commonly get wrong on projects is that many projects make mistakes that we can avoid. I call them avoidable mistakes. These are mistakes that when we engage early, when we document, when we follow up, when we resolve, we eventually avoid all of the mistakes that could lead to social unrest or escalations or trigger so many other issues that could slow down the funding. Some engage communities too late after key decisions have already been made and concluded. How the lands are going to be taken is concluded. In fact, construction have commenced. That is already late. And some conduct consultation only once and assume that the process is complete. Like I said, that is wrong. And others fail to document meetings properly. They ignore the vulnerable groups. If you do not ask, actually, you will not have the vulnerable groups come to you to say, yes, we are here. No, because they are usually sidelined. There is no inclusivity. Sometimes it's just constant in most communities that the blind and the deaf is left behind. So you, the project proponent, have to say, hey, I need to have do you have some people who are vulnerable in this community? Where are the women? Where are the pregnant women? Where are the crippled? In all forms of vulnerability, you have to ask and make sure that the communication system is very effective to reach everyone. So let's move quickly. What is the link to bankability? The link between stakeholders engagement and bankability. Strong stakeholder system are more likely to be viewed as bankable. Generally, a lender may ask whether the community accepts the project, whether the grievances, most cases there are grievances, it's just the gravity of the grievance. So we want to ask, are the grievances, are they being managed? Are they being documented? Can we see? Can you show us evidence? Is the land taken in a civilized, or let me say in a standard way, using the IFC performance standards? Normally that's our benchmark approach, but also the local laws are in alignment with the PS. So we check whether the land and the livelihood issues are resolved and whether stakeholders or those in opposition of the project, can they delay the project? Can they delay the construction or the operation? When this project starts operation, are the opposition to the project going to really constitute a serious risk for the project? Now, what are the risks? What are the risks? Or what questions should we be asking peculiar to this community? So these have to be asked. And this is how we link it to bankability. If it's high risk, it's not a full red flag. It's just to say, okay, what needs to be put in place to make sure that we mitigate the risks and that we are able to move forward on the project. So next is monitoring and reporting expectations. We expect, and DFIs increasingly expect, that projects maintain clear engagement records. I always say in this series of webinars that you have to show us evidence. What are your consultation evidence? What's your social monitoring report? What are the caps that you have put in place? Are you tracking the caps? And what are the ongoing communication records? So monitoring and documentation, they go hand in hand. It is an essential part of financing and cannot be put aside at all in any way. So next is, how can projects strengthen social license? How projects can strengthen social license? We can strengthen social license by doing virtually all of what I have said in the past 15 minutes. early engagement, maintaining transparency, improving the communication systems that exist, and documenting interactions that you're having with the communities. And then the GRM, very critical, and integrating social risks also into project management. It has to be integrated in the project management or the work plans that have been slated out. So social license is built through consistency. And I keep saying trust, underline trust. Trust over time. It cannot be created at the last minute when a financing review begins, and it cannot be purchased through isolated community donations. We cannot just come and say, hey, okay, the community, we are donating a borehole for you. We're making this road. That is not social license. It is an engagement that builds trust, that is built through also respectful and credible commitment, fair processes, and responsiveness to the real concerns that they are raising. That is how the license is built. So for project sponsors, this means that social performance must be part of project governance from the beginning. The governance structure must take into account the social license to operate. So at Richflood, we begin by stakeholders mapping and then engagement all through the process. When we are developing the work plan, we run it from the beginning of the contract between Richflood and the DFI or the project proponent or whoever the client is from the beginning of when we commence to the very end of when we hand over to the client's own team for social engagement. So it's continuous throughout the lifespan of the project. We support client not only by preparing those documents, but we help to build capacity, to build your systems so that implementation can be monitored and it can be easily demonstrated to the lenders or to regulators or any party at all that, yes, this project has the social license to operate and is maintaining the social license to operate. So the key message from today's session is that stakeholder engagement directly affects financing readiness. It does directly affect financing readiness, and projects with strong social systems are viewed as lower risk. They are more stable, they are more sustainable. So it is not an optional license to get, the social license to operate. It's a major factor influencing project success and bankability of it. So I will now take any question if we have any in the room. If we have any questions, I will take questions. If there is none, yeah. So the social license to operate, I'll be checking, and if there are questions, please, I'll be checking to see. The community engagement approach, I would like to, if there is none, I should have added it to the screen, to the slide, but we always have the entry strategy for every community. It's very important. There is an entry strategy because some communities are highly volatile in terms of accepting or receiving or engaging with foreigners, your exit strategy. And also in the process, we develop what we call the key messages. What is the message? Because misinformation is also poor communication. So yes, you are informing, you are engaging, but you're giving the wrong information that could escalate grievances or that could multiply the grievances. There's a way to communicate even a negative impact to the community. So it's always good to have a designed a communication framework. What are you communicating? In what way are you communicating? The communication framework, does it consider the vulnerable groups? And what vulnerability are we looking at? So different vulnerable groups have different communication style. So all that is what makes up an effective stakeholders engagement. And then what message, in what way are we communicating? So we will not go all the way to say, we must speak in English. When speaking in English in an environment that is not an English-speaking environment is already a negative. It's as good as no communication. So there is an entry strategy. There is the language for communication. and there is a way to tackle all of the concerns that come up. Thank you, Usman Abdullahi, and Patience Kudu. Thank you. What happens when the community refuse the project? Okay, good question, Patience. When the community refuse the project, the question I would like to ask is why? Nobody rejects development. Why is the community refusing the project? They have sensed certain risks. It could be that their lands will be taken. It could be that their farmlands will be affected. It could be that the quality of air that they breathe in will be affected. It could be that they will no longer have access to their agricultural practices, which is land take also. So when a community refuses a project, I've worked on projects where the community say, no, we are not having this project here. In fact, the equipment arrived wrong again, but the equipment arrived and they were trying to access the community, and the boys in the community, the youths, rose up and said, no, this project is not taking place here. It's not taking place here. And they had to go back, and there was a setback for about 3 years for that project. Yes, they refused the project initially, but when we went in and we engaged deeply with the community, we made them see the benefits of the project, not just to their community, but to the country, and then also the negative impact, yes, that the project would have on them. And this is how the negative impact is going to be ameliorated. You're going to be relocated to certain location, which is better, which is far better than what you have right now. If you have 10 hectares of land, we are procuring for you 15 hectares of land. So you see, you have not lost much, but you are relocating your farmland, something like that. So when they see the transparency and the honesty, trust begin to build. And the issue of community refusing a project begins to dwindle down when there is engagement. The right people talking to the community leaders, talking to the youth leaders, talking to the farm groups, the cooperatives, talking to them to see, yes, transparently, not hiding any part of the impact at all. There would be cooperation eventually. And another way, Patience, when a community refuses a project, you can involve the regulators, because engagement also brings in the regulators to be able to, those who understand the culture, the norms, the way that the community operates, or the way of life generally, which is the culture. You bring in people that can speak to the community and they can understand, because you may not be communicating what they want to hear. So that is the reason, Patience Kudu. Thanks for, that is how to go about it. Engagement. Engagement is always the answer. Early engagement, and through the processes as I have explained. If you can repeat engagement until there is alignment between the project promoters and also the community. Thank you, Diko. Thank you. Okay, Priscilla from Sierra Leone. She says some community are sometimes difficult to understand. How can you handle this? Yes, like I have worked in Sierra Leone. The communities in Sierra Leone, how they perceive projects is completely different from my country, Nigeria. So you have to understand the community. Priscilla, I cannot just come into Kono, for instance. I just go into Kono, I go straight to the project location because we acquired a land there and we want to build maybe a gold refinery, and we just go right in there to get started. That would be wrong. You have to use the entry strategy that I have discussed. Engage first with the federal government. The federal government issues the licenses that is needed, and then you move together with the federal government to the local district and discuss with the district council. There's acceptability there most often, and then it dovetails to the communities. And when you reach the communities, you are insisting that everyone be carried along. You are insistence, the way are Africans, right? That everyone be carried along, irrespective of who they are, their level, their influence level. The community has a high influence, priority influence all the time, the local communities. So yes, there could be difficult local communities, but still engagement, using the right tools of engagement will help. Okay, Diko? We were in a community to carry out field appraisal, but the youth refused, resisted for the fact that they think the government always want to take advantage of them, and their demands was for money. Even though the project was going to be beneficial to them, they seized cameras, etc., until the Oni of Yoruba land was engaged. You see, thank you, Diko, for that. Now, the Oni of Yoruba land is a traditional ruler that is expected. So you see, when you have engaged with their traditional ruler, they respect these hierarchies. They respect these hierarchies. And what are the issues? What really is the issue? You have to find out what the issue is, because you are responsible for documenting, addressing, and you have to be responsive, yeah? Communicating back to them how you have resolved the issue. Do not stop, DICO, at only the ONI level. The ONI can grant you access, but your social engagement team still need to execute their job using the right standards to the fullest. So it has to be inclusive. Don't stop at the leadership of the community. We do that most of the time. Don't stop at the leadership of the community. You have to go down to the inhabitants, that man who occupies that land, who does not own that land, but have been living on that land and making his livelihood from that land. That man is critical in the whole mapping for the stakeholders. His livelihood that will be affected needs to be addressed in your livelihood restoration plan, which we'll discuss on another day. Thank you, guys. We are 1 minute late. Thank you, Diko, for engaging really good. Thank you, Priscilla. Okay. How do you handle community use that insist on having financial benefits built into the project? Community benefits. Insist on community benefit, not financial benefit to someone. Look at the overall. Depending on the type of project, you can have a development agreement with the community that this is what you will benefit and this is how we are going to go about it. Thank you so much. This has been engaging. We meet again in 2 weeks' time. We are 2 minutes late. Thank you, guys. So I believe you have used the link in the chat box. We'll close now, but we can still leave it for 30 seconds so you can click the link. If you ever need a certificate in the course of this series, you would have to attend this webinar 4 to 5 times, I think, the series of webinars. You have to attend it. And how do we know you have attended is by putting in your attendance in the link in the chat box. All right. Thank you, and do have a very great week ahead of you. A productive one. Goodbye.